So towards the end of winter, one of our neighbors ran out of firewood. And so we helped them out by giving them some firewood to get through the rest of winter. Unfortunately though, while we were doing it, this end cap here fell over in this back row. We're gonna have to pull all this wood down, get this back down level here, try to rebuild it and restack it, all while not moving any of this, because I really don't want to have to move that. So this kind of sucks, but it is what it is. So let's get to it. Okay, so it took a little bit of work, but I finally got that tower dismantled. Oh, it's kind of treacherous actually, being back here knowing that if either one of these stacks fall over, not so good for Jason, that's for damn sure. So now what I've got to do is try to rebuild this back stack better than I apparently built it the first time. Because I have got to get this filled in with wood here. So we're going to try it. This is what we're dealing with here. So that stack right here came up to here. That whole stack fell backwards. So, and all of this went with it. So I had to get rid of all of that, move it out of there. Now we're going to try and rebuild this. Okay, well, with Jen's help, took a little bit, but we finally got it repaired. Rebuilt. All is good in the world of Jen and Jason. So yesterday we fixed this, and today what we're doing is filling this front row here all the way up with firewood that we did not use this past season, and it's all of this back here. So we're going to continue to try to fill this side up. This is all of next winter's firewood, so I need to open this bay up. We've got some broken pallets in here we've got to replace, and we've got a ton of wood to start cutting this year, and so I need some place to put it, but I don't want to bury the driest wood all the way in the back. So we're going to try to get all this over here as much as we can, and that way I can get in here, get rid of some of these broken pallets, and I'll have a spot where I can start, putting some firewood. So some time ago, I did a video where I talked about some things that you need to consider if you're planning on leaving the city and moving off grid. I wanted to do a follow-up video and talk more specifically about moving off grid here in the state of Maine. Now, for the sake of this video, we're just going to assume that you are moving to northern Maine. You are going to be living off-grid, and whether it be homesteading or whatever the case might be, but the objective here is to move to northern Maine and live off-grid. So a few of those things that you're going to definitely need to consider before making the plunge out here is black fly season. Now, black fly season lasts from about mid-May through early June. It is why I'm wearing a net, and it's also why I have a good stash of bug dope. Now, we don't have a lot of bugs here in Maine, and as a matter of fact, from about, September through May, we have no bugs whatsoever. It's just simply too cold for them to be out. But during these summer months, we've got 3 big seasons. The first season is black flies, and again, they end in about mid-June. Second season are thick mosquitoes, and they start up as soon as the black flies die out, and they're going to last until towards the end of the season when we get our deer flies. We're talking about some very feisty flies that definitely bite and are a pain in the ass when trying to work out in the woods. Now, there's a few things you can do to help remedy that. Obviously, number 1 is wear a hairnet. Number 2 is wear light colors. Unlike me, that's wearing a black sweatshirt. The other thing is wear long sleeves, wear pants, have more than enough off or bug dope with you, And then you can also use smudge pots, which is basically a grill or a pot or some sort of fire pit where you're burning like sawdust or old leaves or wet hay, something that puts off smoke, because that's going to help deter and push those bugs back. The other thing that is a saving grace for us, at least us here living in a wet environment, and that is that we have dragonflies. And once the dragonflies come out, they really do a great job of mitigating the impact of black flies and the mosquitoes. They do a great job of pushing those away and eating a lot of them. But like I said, it's not too bad of a give and take here, because for the majority of the year, we don't have any bugs. Now, the next thing I want to bring up is something that I think definitely needs to be talked about, especially if you are moving out to an unmaintained road. I think there is not enough discussion about this out on the interweb, and as a landowner on a 1.5 miles of unmaintained road, and I've been here now for quite a few years, I think I have learned a few things, and I'm going to share those with you here in a minute. Wait till the end of this video for me to share with you what I think is the most important, the single most important thing to know or to consider when leaving the city and moving off grid here in northern Maine. But first, if you move out here to a maintained road, you have really no worries except for the occasional pothole that'll pop its head up, usually in the springtime when the frost is coming out. And then there's the dreaded annual grading that most towns will do to the unmaintained roads. They usually do it in early spring, right after the frost. And the unfortunate part of that is the volume of dust is absolutely absurd. All right, now getting back to the unmaintained road, there's a few things you have to consider. Number one, an unmaintained road in the state of Maine is a road that has been discontinued and is no longer maintained in any way, shape, or form by the township. Doesn't matter how many times you reach out to your township, the answer will always be the same. It is not their problem. The other side of that, though, is that it is open for public use, and so whatever you do decide to do to the road, or whatever you decide to invest in the road, just be sure that you are okay with the fact that other people are going to be using it, because again, even though it is unmaintained or discontinued, it is still a public easement that is managed by the town, or at least is owned by the town, and they do allow that. So the reason that's important is that if you do live on an unmaintained road, you might want to consider at least inspecting the road to see what type of damage that road has received. Our road has been discontinued for, I think, like 50 or 60 years. Now, we did have an old landowner here who maintained the road for about a decade or so. But other than that, this road has not been maintained by anybody. And so there are some really problem spots. Specifically right down the road from where our homestead is, was really bad. And so we ended up having to bring in about a 1/4 mile of gravel just to fix the road and have the road in a condition that Jen and I felt comfortable enough with driving on, that we would also be able to get services out here if we needed them. You know, we can still get construction vehicles out here or dump trucks out here for delivery of gravel. We can still get our propane guy out here. Had we not invested the money we invested, though, the high probability this road would not have been able to sustain those vehicles for many more years. Culverts. Culverts are another big thing. If there is a culvert on an unmaintained road and that culvert fails, nobody's going to repair it unless the landowner repairs it. We are in a similar situation. We have a bad culvert, and we do need to repair it. Otherwise, it will collapse. And if it collapses and cuts off the water from that marsh will flood. That flooding will then come directly into our property and flood us out, and we can't have that. And so because of that, we have to invest in the culvert. We have to invest in the equipment to replace it. And that is just something that is, it's just life in the woods out here on an unmaintained road. Now, there has been some discussions over the course of the last few years that we've been here with whether or not that's fair to the landowners. But to be frankly honest, it doesn't matter. The rules are pretty cut, clear, and concise. The towns do not manage them, they do not maintain them, and it is up to you. With that said, that also pertains to snow removal. So if you are moving off grid here in Maine and you are moving on a discontinued road, you better be prepared to remove that snow yourself. Now, thankfully, here on our road, it is 1.5 miles, but we do have some other landowners. And so we've been able to come to agreements where we are sharing and divvying up the clearing of the road during the winter. It helps tremendously for us so that we're not completely responsible for the entire 1.5 miles, because to be frankly honest with you, that is a very long distance to manage and maintain ourselves. So being able to do that definitely helps. So when you're considering moving out to an unmaintained road, be prepared to invest in whatever equipment you may need in order to remove the snow. Firewood here in northern Maine is a way of life. If you are going to be heating with wood and wood alone, firewood becomes an everyday chore in one capacity or another. So here in Maine, there are 2 ways to get firewood. 1, you can buy it, or 2, you can chop it down. When we originally moved here, first thing we did was we ordered 9 cord of firewood in log length. We also had a video showing us attempting to cut and split that 9 cord of wood in a weekend, which we failed miserably, but I will leave the link to that video in the description below. Now, depending on where you are, you might have an abundance of hardwood, and if you do, that's fantastic. If you do not, then you'll have to buy it, and my recommendation would be to buy log lengths as opposed to buying cut and split, only from a cost standpoint. If cost is not a problem, obviously it is much easier to get it in that's already been split. But if cost is a consideration, then get a log length, get a good chainsaw and a good wood splitter, and split it yourself. Now, the reason I say firewood is a everyday occurrence, or at least it's going to be, you are going to be living and breathing firewood, is because, take this situation, for instance, we are trying to move this firewood, which is the end of our allocated firewood for the season. Now that the season is over, we're trying to move this wood to the front of next year's wood pile so that we can use this wood first. This is going to be about a half a day's project, and then during this summer we'll be cutting and splitting firewood all season to try to fill this side of our woodshed up so that we have firewood drying for the 25-26 season. Far too many times we have seen our neighbors not have enough firewood to go into winter. And it is unfortunate. Firewood is, if you are heating with firewood, it is imperative that you are prepared going into winter, because either trying to get firewood or cut your own firewood during, when it's cold outside and there's snow on the ground, just flat out sucks. So having a good wood shed and being prepared with firewood certainly helps and makes life a lot easier here in Maine. Now, when it comes to firewood, we've learned a few things. Number 1, the bigger the piece, the longer the burn, and that pertains to at night when you're getting ready for bed. Take a nice big chunky piece like this guy, throw that into your wood box, and that should give you a few hours. If you are just around the house inside and you can keep the fire burning yourself, these guys work great. If you are cutting firewood off of your own property, chances are you're going to get a lot of rounds, but when you buy it split, you'll get your split pieces. When you get split pieces, or if you are splitting your own firewood, my recommendation is to split some of these in half like this. Then you can use these to stack your corner ends for your stacks of firewood. Let me show you what I mean. So on the ends of this row, we have the halves that we've cut. We use those to create the ends, and then everything else fills up in the center. Works very well. Your firewood shed is going to have snakes. It's going to have bees. It's going to have wasps. During the winter time, mice are going to get into the bottom of your rows. They're going to make little houses. And when you find them, don't be alarmed. Kick them off to the ground. You can burn them if you want, or you can do what we do, and that is nothing. You just leave them there where they sit. It's just something that you just have to be prepared for and aware of, so that it doesn't startle you. Now, Maine does have snakes. The majority of them, I believe, are a type of garter snake. We have them in this woodshed. We have them underneath some of our buildings. They don't bother us. They don't bother anything. If anything, they do help with the mice population by helping to keep that down. So we do try to have a healthy relationship with our snakes. We don't try to disturb them much. And we try not to let the dogs get them. But unfortunately, sometimes they just do, and that's just the way of life. So one last thing about firewood is, in my experience, what we have found is that having the wood shed at a pretty good distance away from the cabin will help keep the mice that are going to end up in your woodshed and keep them in the woodshed, as opposed to having them find their way into your cabin area. We also have a small shed next to the cabin where we keep about 4 or 5 days worth of wood. And basically what we'll do is we'll come out here to our main wood shed. We'll fill the smaller shed up with the wood from this wood shed. Because the wood in the smaller shed is moving around, we're in there. We do have a pretty successful a chance of keeping all the rodents out of there, whereas opposed to this wood shed, it just sits here and isn't really bothered much. Even if we come in here and start taking down a tier, there's so much wood in here and so much space that it really doesn't bother the mice. So keeping your main wood shed away from the cabin is absolutely key. And then also having a small area near the cabin where you can keep a few days worth of firewood, that helps too. All right, so another thing I'll talk about with firewood is get to know the wood that's in your area. But there are three types of wood I want to talk about. The first one is, I didn't even know this wood existed until I moved here to Maine. This here is called ironwood. It is extremely dense, extremely hardwood. It is a great firewood when it's dry. If you have an opportunity to harvest it on your property, I highly suggest that you do. Obviously, you don't want to take young trees, right? You do want to take mature ones, or preferably dead ones. But it is really, really good firewood. We have a ton of it on our property. We have a ton of dead ironwood on our property. And we've been very, very fortunate with it. Another type of wood I want to talk about, but this is just the opposite, and this is cedar. So this is a softwood. It grows predominantly in wet areas. If you have cedar on your property, under no circumstance do I recommend you burn it in any way, shape, or form. There's a few reasons why. One, it burns fast, but more importantly, it pops. In a wood stove, popping is bad because one of them embers can pop up into your stovepipe, depending on how old your stove is, and that's always bad. We don't like burning cedar. We won't burn cedar, but what we do use it for is we use it as a half, and we use it as our stacking. All right, so the third and final type of wood I want to talk about in this video is white birch. White birch is considered a hardwood. It is considered a good firewood, but in my experience, it's terrible. Obviously the bark is a phenomenal fire starter. It burns really easy, really quick, really hot. But as far as the wood itself, I'm not much of a fan for this stuff. It burns really quick. I mean, we use it if we have it. I'm just not a big fan of it. I just don't think it burns as well as other woods that we have here. Yeah, that's my take on that. As an added bonus to this video of things that you should probably consider when moving off grid, is having a good set of dogs. We have 3 of them. Mr. Tasunka over here. We have Miss Matcha, she's the newest. And then we've got Mr. Whitco, which is, oh hell, I don't know, where is Mr. Whitco? Oh, there he is, right there. Yeah, these 3 dogs are hands down the greatest asset we have, I think, being out here. They let us know what's happening while we work. They are out here playing, doing their thing, eating their grass, but all the while their ears are always, well, maybe not, but they are always on top of it, even when they play in the dirt. Mom and I can be out here working our butts off, doing our thing, and they are out here doing their thing, and they keep us safe. They keep us safe during the day. They keep us safe at night when we come outside. Case in point, last night, we're sitting in the house about 8:30 at night, and all of a sudden the dogs start going absolute ape shit. Turns out we had a pack of coyotes howling just in this field here, right across our road here, just right out in here. And we brought Whitco and Matcha out, and they started barking, and those coyotes were gone. So we know that they can smell our chickens over here, and so having the dogs around definitely helps. Just a few minutes ago, we were talking about the black flies, and boy, have they come out. I mean, they are just completely surrounding my head. I can see them flying all over the camera. I'm sure you can hear them buzzing around, and you're probably able to see them. They are absolutely relentless, and as the temperature goes up, it's hot, it's humid, it's just nasty, but it's a perfect environment for those little... All right, so if you've made it this far, it is time for me to tell you what the single most important thing to consider when moving off grid here in northern Maine, and that is, no matter what your feelings are on people, get to know your neighbors. I cannot stress it enough how important having a good relationship with your neighbors can be. Jen and I found very quickly that knowing the neighbors and having the neighbors know us was such a key role in our success, our early success here. Everything from, I mean, gosh, the list of how our neighbors helped us that first summer, that first winter, is just mind-numbingly long. And the reason I say, no matter what your opinion is on people in general, is, you know, everybody comes to Maine for whatever their reasons are. Some people want to just get away from it all. Some people want to get away from people. Some people, you know, like us, wanted to leave the rat race and become more self-sufficient, get closer to the land, get closer to our roots as human beings. And whatever the case is, the reality is doing this on your own without any assistance or help is a challenge that I don't want nothing to do with. It is a very tough lifestyle, and even the thought of not having someone to either share it with or someone to to lean on when you need help is just, I can't even fathom it. So for us, having our neighbors know who Jen and I are, and having us know them, is just such a critical piece of this puzzle that that's why I feel like, you know, knowing your neighbors and having a good relationship with those neighbors is such a vital key to success living off grid. All right, well, I am done moving firewood for today. I'm actually going to head over to the garden, and I'm going to start working on the garden to get it ready. But that is going to be in a different video. So for now, thank you so much for sticking around and watching this video. I hope that you were able to take something away from it, especially if you are considering moving to Maine. We will be putting out more videos like this as I come up with more things to talk about. So thanks a lot again. If you liked it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you folks on the next video.
Try to organize my mind while the world falls behind. Slow waltz around the sun. Every year reveals a change. Looking back now, feeling strange. We all learn to be someone. What happens next?